The amount of untapped potential in the form of superhero characters out there is actually pretty insane. Yet for some reason we have had the same Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man stories rehashed multiple times. Well, how about today on Top 10 Nerd we look at 10 seemingly forgotten heroes who deserve their own movie. I'm Adam Andrews, let's jump in. Kicking off the list at number 10 today is Deadman. Boston Brand was the only son of Gary and Barbara Brand, and his parents were very much not great. When his parents didn't fight each other, they took out their anger on Boston. Because of that, when he was 16 years old, he lashed out against his parents and ran away from home. As you do when you are a fictional character who runs away from home, Boston joined the circus and eventually became an elite gymnast and trapeze performer. While that was great for him, he could not leave his past behind and frequently sought out some form of peace in the bottle and would often become physical with people. Everything for Boston changed though when during one show an assassin from the League of Assassins named Hook took his life during his trapeze performance. When he passed away, Boston was placed in between life and death by the Hindu goddess of balance, Ramakrishna. She told him that he needed to atone for his past transgressions and egocentrism. As punishment, he was to return to the world as a ghost, invisible to most of the world, and he was to better the lives of others using his ghostly abilities, namely the ability to possess others. Now I don't know about you, but I could see that being easily adapted into a pretty compelling movie. If you've ever seen the Ricky Gervais movie Ghost Town, just take that and superfy it. Number 9. Hellcat. During her formative years, Patsy Walker's fame-obsessed mother, Dorothy, would use her daughter as a way to make a buck, usually while also living vicariously through her daughter, and constantly disapproving of her tomboy nature. Dorothy would pressure her daughter into modeling, and when that didn't work out, due to Patsy's own lack of interest and commitment, Dorothy started a comic book containing fictionalized romantic adventures of her daughter as a teenager, which is super weird. Despite being super creepy, this did give Patsy Walker some notoriety in the Marvel Universe before she finally joined up with the heroes she idolized, the Avengers. And that story itself is kind of funny. Because, basically, using tactics learned from her mother, Patsy blackmailed the mutant Hank McCoy, aka Beast, into helping her transform into a superhero. Patsy tracked down Beast while he was an Avenger and forced him to allow her to accompany them on a mission. During the Avengers ride-along, Patsy found an old costume that once belonged to Greer Nelson, aka Tigra, who could also get her own movie, just saying, but during her early days as the Cat. Now Patsy took the gear for herself and assumed the identity Hellcat. Thanks to the suit, her natural ability plus experience over time with training from Moondragon and her husband Damon Hellstrom, Hellcat has become a force to be reckoned with in Marvel Comics. I think her origin story is pretty damn unique, and I think with a little tweaking it can make for an impactful and pretty awesome movie. Number 8. The Question. Vic Sage, aka The Question, is one of the greatest detectives of the DC Universe. Yes, even ranking upside along Batman. Despite having no superpowers, his analytical abilities, finding clues which are overlooked by most people, plus his skill as a fearsome interrogator and martial artist, somewhat on par with Batman, and his faceless mask made of an experimental material called pseudoderm that enables him to change disguises easily, plus his somewhat eccentric personality, make him an incredibly interesting and kinda somewhat creepy protagonist. An old school detective noir movie can easily make him a fan favorite. For any of you who have seen Zack Snyder's Watchmen or who have read the DC comic of the same name, the character of Rorschach was based off of The Question, so we already know that a character like this can work on film. It's just a matter of creating a story that the character can support all on his own. I also think that even a story about his protege, Renee Montoya, would also potentially be even better. Number 7. Zatanna. A lot of people sleep on Zatanna, and that is a mistake. Zatanna is part of the Homo Magi race, giving her a genetic talent for magic that makes her one of the greatest magic users in the DC universe. Zatanna was born with magic, but she's not limited by that. With the addition of learned magics, Zatanna can cast a whole multitude of spells that allow her to do things like travel dimensions, summon objects and beings, perform telekinesis and advanced telepathy, redirect and return attacks, mess with the weather or even time of day, manipulate her own size, transform into basically anything, become intangible, and manipulate magical versions of the elements. But that's all the basic stuff. She can cast spells that can manipulate reality, alter the molecular structure of objects, and move forward, backwards, and freeze time itself. And that's not even getting into what she can do with black magic. She has the potential to make child's play out of most of the people in the Justice League despite that fact. But Zatanna's backstory of becoming a successful stage illusionist before discovering her true magical powers and her half-homo magi parentage while investigating the disappearance of her father? You can't tell me that wouldn't make for a great movie. Number 6. Martian Manhunter. John Johns, or John Jones on Earth, is another character that people really sleep on. But this guy is insane with his level of ability. John is the last of his race of Martians, and he is extremely powerful and should never be slept on. He speaks with the resolve and intelligence of someone who's been around for a very hot minute, and that's because he has been. According to DC Comics, he is in the ballpark of around or over 220 million years old. John arrived on Earth after he was pulled here through space and time by a teleportation beam during an experiment conducted by a Dr. Saul Erdel, who passed away from the shock of actually finding a Martian shortly afterwards, which actually kind of makes sense. But way before that, John's race, the Martians, were practically wiped out a long time ago, leaving him completely alone and isolated. But now, pulled forward in time and finally on Earth with no one to tell him what the heck was going on, he eventually used his shapeshifting abilities to become a detective, operating in Middletown, America. He mainly operated from the safety of his human persona before he eventually exposed himself to the world and became a founding member of the Justice League, and also one of its most powerful members, being even stronger and more capable than Superman with an even more impressive list of abilities. And that makes him a good candidate for a movie, just saying. Number 5. Mr. Miracle. This one would be a bit of a different movie, and I think it would work well as a duo with the character of Orion. Basically, Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle, is the son of DC's Highfather, who is essentially the opposite to the villain Darkseid. As part of a truce with Darkseid, Scott was traded with Darkseid's son, Orion. While Orion got to live a pretty good life with Highfather and become a hero, Scott was treated incredibly badly living on Apokolips as basically a prisoner of Darkseid. But despite the hellish conditions on Apokolips, Scott was able to retain his inherent goodness, and using his skill as a master escape artist, and despite the fact that he is a pacifist, he escaped from Darkseid's clutches. Telling that story in a movie format would be awesome, and then it could lead into more stories with the rest of DC's roster of cinematic heroes. I personally think his story is incredibly interesting and unique. Number 4. Darkhawk. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney, and when he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he happened to stumble upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. This ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave Chris quite the set of abilities. Obviously, the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, whatever that means, and basically had untapped potential. As time went on and he eventually gained the ability to go to space, he learned of the Shi'ar origins of his suit and of the fraternity of raptors, that are basically like Marvel's over-the-top, super cool space cops. Almost like Green Lanterns, but cooler and less utilized. I'm just imagining how Darkhawk could fit into the MCU's ever-expanding roster and stories, and I think it would be a missed opportunity to not include the character. Number 3. Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, the daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevi Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away, sadly, and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior, to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. Earth 541 is the home of a Starbrand bearer who has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedom. The Starbrand power takes on many different forms, but doesn't seem to be bound by physics, and supplies the bearer infinite power limited only by their imagination. While that kind of power sort of breaks a lot of things in the MCU, the amount of Starbrand bearers going back millions of years gives a plethora of character stories to pick from, and I mean, let's be honest, someone being granted an ancient incredible power is a classic basis for a superhero movie. Number 2, Nightwing. Now, Nightwing is in no way a forgotten hero, not even a little bit. But explain to me how we have had around 11 Batman live-action movies, and I don't think Nightwing has appeared as Nightwing in a single one. Well, now I don't want him just featured, I want a full-on Nightwing movie in Bloodhaven with little to no Batman. Of all the members of the Bat family, Dick Grayson was not only the very first, but for a lot of people, including me, he is the favorite. Born to a family of acrobats, orphaned and then taken in by Bruce Wayne, Dick became the very first Robin, appearing in Detective Comics number 38 in 1940, created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and illustrated by Jerry Robinson. As you can imagine, he has a long history, and as such, a large amount of experience and proficiency. He was the leader of the Teen Titans for a while, and when his Robin career came to an end, he became Nightwing to honor another hero by the same name from Krypton, Superman's home planet. He has gone on to take the Batman mantle a couple of times, but honestly, it was in 1995 and 1996 when he received his own stories that he really became his own. To set Nightwing apart from Batman, he was given his own city, the decaying harbor town known as Bloodhaven, which was just north of Gotham. It allowed him to be close enough to Gotham to stay part of the Batman family, as well as have his own city and series of adventures, and honestly, some of them are even darker and somewhat better and more compelling than some of Batman's own stories. And finally, in at number 1, Blue Marvel. A former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brashear is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters and one of my absolute underutilized favorites. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor. Luckily, this also gave him superpowers, which he used to become the masked hero known as the Blue Marvel. Unfortunately though, Connor became unstable both physically and mentally and became the incredibly powerful villain Anti-Man. During one of their biggest and climactic fights, the Blue Marvel's mask was torn, revealing to the world that he was African American. Due to the socio-political climate of America in the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy asked Blue Marvel to take an early retirement to ease racial tensions. It wasn't until decades later in the modern age that Adam would once again step up as the Blue Marvel, one of the most interesting and powerful heroes the world has, yet one that often feels really underappreciated. A movie for this character would give him the fame that he rightly deserves. That's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching here on Top 10 Nerd. I'll catch you all on the flippy flop, and until next time, peace out, nerds.